Welcome, everyone. This is Brian Belley, founder at crowdwise.org, where we help new investors get started in equity crowdfunding. Today, I'm very excited to be here with Wes from LEAH Labs. We're going to be having a conversation, just getting to learn a little bit more about their business, as well as get to know Wes as a founder. So Wes, welcome, and I'll hand things over to you to start. So maybe tell us a little bit about your background and at a high level, what LEAH Labs is.
Yeah, you bet. So again, I'm Wes Wierson. I'm a CEO and founder here of LEAH Labs. So a little bit about my background. I'm a gene editor, I guess, by training. So I just finished my PhD from Iowa State University in December of 2018. And during my time as a graduate student, I used CRISPR-Cas9 and TALENs, which are gene editing reagents, to learn about ways to better control the outcomes of gene editing. So you use these different proteins to cut DNA, but really what happens after you cut DNA wherever you want, that's kind of the more important part of gene editing. And so I found that using short stretches of homology around double-strand DNA cuts, you can actually put DNA into the genome. And so that was kind of the whole focus of my thesis. So really what this allows us to do now is to kind of reprogram cells to kind of do what we want them to. So that was the focus of my PhD, but really how I kind of got into science as a whole, is just my grandma always took me to the science center when I was younger, and I always just kind of wondered and asked questions. I was always asking questions, why do trees grow, that kind of thing. And so really I got my start in gene editing in 2011 when TALENs came on the field. I was working as an undergrad in the lab that actually invented TALENs, and so that was also at Iowa State, and I was there, like I said, through my PhD. And was really always interested in using gene editing to kind of create something in the world that has value. And so using what I developed as a grad student, where we can put DNA wherever we want to reprogram genomes, we kind of stumbled upon the idea of using that as a tool to create cell therapies for canine disease. And so that's kind of the start of LEAH Labs. We filed a patent for the gene editing tech, licensed that into our company. And now we are using that to create these cell therapies that we reprogram genetically, so that they can find cancer and kill that cancer specifically, which is very different than, of course, the way chemotherapy works. So chemotherapy just kills all dividing cells, and that can have some off targets. And so this type of therapy actually goes in and specifically finds the cancer that we're trying to target and eliminates it that way.
Awesome. So it sounds like, I believe you have a couple co-founders. Maybe you could talk about your team, and did you all meet during that thesis, or what's maybe their backgrounds as well?
Yeah. So I met definitely all my co-founders during my time as a graduate student. It was very collaborative work. So I was at Iowa State. We had a gene editing technology development grant with a really special group at Mayo Clinic. That's where Dr. Steve Ecker and Dr. Carl Clark are. So my professors, Dr. Jeff Essner and Dr. Mara McGrail at Iowa State. And so those professors had a grant which started when I was pretty early in the lab. And that's kind of how I got my start into the gene editing thesis. And so I met them through that work, and they're kind of the ones here at Mayo Clinic. They're kind of the ones that really got me on to starting the company. And so, along with Zach Ware-Jonkis, who is my chief operating officer here at LEAH Labs, we're kind of the ones that are full time with the company currently. And then another really talented co-founder at Mayo Clinic, Dr. Saad Kandarian, he actually treats patients at Mayo Clinic with CAR T-cell therapy. Right now, in CAR T-cell therapy, kind of letting the cat out of the bag is what we're trying to develop for dogs. So he's a great co-founder. And then we have a whole team of veterinarians at Iowa State and the Iowa State Veterinary College who are also working with us. In particular, Dr. John Michelle, who's a clinical pharmacologist at Iowa State. So that's kind of how the team all met, was kind of during my PhD, and talking about gene editing, trying to help some of the vets at Iowa State get some gene editing going in their academic research, and then working with Dr. Kandarian on some gene editing projects academically as well. And then, of course, with Dr. Ecker, Dr. Clark here at Mayo Clinic.
Awesome. I think that's great background to hear kind of where you guys came from. Can you talk a little bit more about, I guess, where you're at today? I believe you have, some patents pending, and, where is the product at today in terms of development?
Yeah, so also, I guess, where we're at today, I keep saying here at Mayo Clinic. So we're actually, our lab right now is located in the Office of Entrepreneurship at Mayo Clinic. It's called the Hatchery. And so what that is it's a kind of an incubator space to help startups get off the ground. And so there's a whole wet lab space actually here behind me that has everything we need to do molecular biology. So I guess that's why I keep saying here, because we're at Mayo Clinic. But I'm sorry, your question. So where the technology is at today. Yeah, so we have licensed the gene editing tech just as a tool to reprogram genomes in our company. But again, that's just a tool, and we developed that in zebrafish and different human cell lines. So now we have to take that technology and we have to figure out how to get it to work as efficiently as it was in zebrafish and in cell lines in primary T cells. And so since our company really launched and got going in January of this year, we have that gene editing technology now translated to T cells. It works. We can cause double-strand breaks in T cells, and we can integrate our DNA cargoes into T cell genomes just like we want. So we're working on a provisional patent on that technology. And then we have reprogrammed these T cells to create CAR T cells, chimeric antigen receptor T cells, that we have shown can kill canine B-cell lymphoma in vitro. So everything we've done so far is in a test tube. However, it shows that our technology, the core components all work. And so now really our next kind of 6 months, 4 to 6 months, is to really optimize that technology and scale it so that we can create a cell therapy that's affordable to the canine market. And then, of course, we need to get it into a dog and show that it is effective actually in vivo as we predicted it will be.
Okay. And maybe 2 follow-up questions to that. So one, if I heard you correctly, I think you're already partnering with someone who does some of this CAR T cell, therapy. Is that already something that's being done in humans today, or what's kind of the level of that technology? Is this something you're porting over to the canine domain? We'll start with that question, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So in late 2017, there were 2 FDA approvals for CAR T cell therapy in humans. And so what this technology actually is, to kind of take a step back. So of course there's antibodies. Most people have heard of antibodies. And what antibodies do are bind to specific shapes, such as squares or circles or stars that they're specific for. And then they elicit an immune response to cells or different molecules that express those shapes. And so what you can do is actually take those different antibodies that bind to certain shapes, and you can fuse them with the T cell receptor, which is on a T cell. And T cells are immune cells that kill foreign invaders. And so if you take a antibody receptor and fuse it to the T cell receptor, then you can reprogram T cells to go in and bind and find specific shapes. And that's actually what enables CAR T cells to be so effective in killing cancer, is because you can reprogram them to specifically find cancer and leave other cells alone. And so, there are 2 companies who have FDA approvals for this now in humans. It's able to induce remissions in human patients at about an 80% level. So 80% of patients that are treated can go into clinical remission. And these are patients that, human patients that are on their deathbeds. So they are, chemotherapy is not working for them. They have no other options. And that's what CAR T cell therapy is then approved for, is to come in as kind of a lifesaver. And it truly is. It truly is. And so that's really another component of why we decided to kind of go into the animal oncology space, is because we had the gene editing expertise to reprogram T cells to create CAR T cells. And then they have been proven and effective in humans. And so it's really just a matter of time, we think, until someone brings this technology to canines. And so we're going to be the ones to do that.
Awesome. So going off that thread, I think a lot of potential investors might be somewhat aware, at least, of the clinical trial process and everything to get something through FDA approvals. What does that look like in the domain of canines and animals? Is it kind of probably not as rigorous, but can you maybe talk a little bit about that, what you have to overcome?
Yeah, for sure. So this is another reason that we're really excited about applying this technology in the veterinary space. So whereas in humans, it's through the FDA approval process, which can take 5 to 10 years, $500 million or more. You have to have a GMP manufacturing facility, which costs hundreds of millions of dollars just to set up. The virus that you use to engineer CAR T cells for the human space right now costs $50,000 for every single dose of CAR T that you want to make. That's a lot of money. Obviously, there's only a very small percentage of dog owners who would be willing to drop that amount of money, though there are those people in the world. But what's really valuable for us is that we can use the USDA path of approval. So this is the United States Department of Agriculture, and they also regulate veterinary products. And so for us, we're actually regulated via the USDA. And so what that allows us to do is really get through the regulatory process in actually just like 2 years for quite a bit less money. So we predict it's only going to take us about $5 million to actually get to market with this therapeutic because we're, for a number of reasons, but mainly is the fact that we're regulated via the USDA. So really, you have to prove that your therapeutic is safe in lab animals, meaning we just treat a few dogs that are lab dogs. Unfortunately, this is just the way the process works. You have to treat some lab dogs, just 5 to 8 lab dogs, to show that your therapeutic doesn't just acutely kill them, and then you're allowed to actually treat client-owned animals. And so via that, you just have to beat a historical control. So we actually don't have to dose any dogs with placebo, which is really awesome. You don't have to take a pet owner's a pet owner's dog and give it a placebo treatment. We can just use historical data for that. So we then treat about 20 to 30 dogs with our therapeutic and show that it beats historical controls. Then we get conditional licensure, which actually allows us to then sell our product.
Okay, that's great to know. So, I mean, this is maybe getting a little bit ahead of the curve, but do you see yourselves in a couple years branching out beyond, just kind of the canine? Is this able to be replicated in, say cats or different other animal species as well? What's kind of your longer term vision for the company?
Yeah, definitely. So, it's going to take a couple years, of course, to get kind of our first asset through the door. And then on top of that, we're really interested in still staying in the canine space for a number of reasons that I can touch on. But yeah, definitely cats definitely get lymphoma. I think lymphoma in cats is actually the number one killer for cancer in cats. So that would certainly be something to go into. But cat owners aren't necessarily as prone to spend as much money as dog owners. There certainly are cat owners that do. I've talked to one who was in $18,000 into their cat for a GI problem. And so, of course, that owner might have been a little bit on the high side of what a cat owner might spend. But if we can drop this therapy, to the price that we hope to be able to hit, we should be able to expand into other markets. And certainly horses would be one of those as well. So certainly horse owners spend a lot of money, and horses also get lymphoma. So we could think about branching into that. But one of the reasons why we're so interested in dogs, though, is the fact that dogs model human disease so well. So we share so much of the same environmental factors that cause disease, such as UV light or what we eat. We all play in the same grass, we swim in the same ponds, and we just share our entire lives with our dogs. And so we have a lot of the same critical physiology in that way, and also a lot of the same drivers in cancer that are found in humans are also replicated in dogs. It's the same disease pathways, the same reasons that we get sick in humans also happens in dogs for many diseases. And so really what we can discover at LEAH Labs for treating canine indications, we can really translate that back over to human indications as well. So really, long term, I think LEAH Labs, the goal is to amass a whole lot of clinical data in spontaneously occurring models of cancer, so dogs that just naturally get cancer. And then be able to, maybe potentially translate that into the human space as well, either ourselves or be able to license that data out to human pharma.
Okay. So I think you've given us a really good understanding of kind of the technology and, the space there. Could we talk maybe a little bit about maybe your potential customers? So specifically, I'm wondering, have you started talking to people to see what they're willing to pay, if they would be willing to actually purchase this product? And do you have like any kind of traction or anything you can actually talk about as of today?
Right. So to answer that question, it's really easy to actually just go off of what people already pay. So I definitely have talked to pet owners and veterinarians and, the animal health pharma. But what people pay today for the current standard of care, is anywhere from $7,000 here in the Midwest to $10,000 to $12,000 or more on the coast. So, and that is for the current standard of care, which is called CHOP. It's a chemotherapy regimen. It's about 3 decades old, and really there has been no increase in efficacy from this protocol called CHOP in that time. But it is still the standard of care for B-cell lymphoma right now in dogs. So really going off of that, if we could charge anything under $7,000, we know that there's a market. We think there's about 50,000 dog owners right now who pay for CHOP every single year. And around about the $4,000 or $5,000 mark is where you really lose even more dog owners. So 50,000 will pay the $7,000 to $10,000 or $12,000 a year, for a single dose of CHOP. However, around the $4,000 mark is where you lose a lot of people. And so if we could really drop our therapeutic price to, around $4,000, we think we can really expand that market. And so I've talked to a number of dog owners, like I said, that the one cat owner, I guess, who was in $18,000, there are people who are willing to pay a premium. And really, you could argue if this actually turns out to be a curative therapeutic like it is in humans, really, then we could charge a premium. But really, that's not why we're in it. We really want to expand this market and really bring these next generation therapeutics, next generation technology to dogs, because we know that dogs deserve that. They're part of the family. So yeah, we're really excited to be able to bring this therapeutic to market under the price of the current standard of care.
Now, that's great to understand. Can you maybe talk to us about some of your biggest obstacles in the near term? You guys are raising money right now on WeFunder. Can you talk about what some of the obstacles are that you're looking to overcome, and perhaps what some of those funds you would be looking to use that for?
Yeah, right. So definitely some of the obstacles that we're looking to overcome in the short term are getting in vivo data. And so that in and of itself is an obstacle. It's kind of a catch-22. We need the investment to get the in vivo data, and we need the in vivo data to really attract the venture capitalists of the world, if you will. So really, I think the biggest obstacle is actually getting our therapeutic into dogs. And so really, it's only going to take us about $200,000 to develop actually the platform technology that we need. I said everything is working right now, but we need to always optimize. So right now, everything works in vitro, proof of concept, but we really need to spend a couple $100,000 to really optimize that and scale it out so that the efficiencies are high enough that we can really drop those therapeutic prices down to what I talked about before, under a few $1,000s. So the funding that we get here, really, like I said, $200,000 will really go to the in vitro development, and then anything after that will allow us to actually treat a dog. And so we just need to treat a few animals with that are the lab animals, and then I have a few veterinarians lined up actually at academic institutions who are interested in running investigator-initiated trials with us, actually outside of the realm of the USDA. And so this is a different way to get really early data for your therapeutics, is that veterinarians are willing to try just about anything as long as you can show that it isn't going to acutely kill the dog. Because there's dogs on their deathbeds who are getting no other treatment, and there are owners asking for anything possible. So these veterinarians are really willing to take an innovative product like what we're developing and actually put it into a dog outside of the realm of the USDA approval. So USDA approval allows us to scale and sell nationally, but through these investigator-initiated trials, we can actually treat client-owned animals as soon as we have shown that we have a reasonable safety profile for our therapeutic. So really, this funding gets us to that key inflection point of treating an animal, getting this in vivo data showing that it's not only safe, but it can actually be effective in eliminating the B cells that we're trying to target. And really, that's kind of the inflection point that gets us to really open up the funding to the venture capitalists of the world.
Awesome. So let's just assume you go and get the approvals, the USDA approvals, whatever else, that it shows it's effective and you're able to kind of grow from there. Have you started thinking about your distribution channels in terms of how do you get this out there so that people start using it? Is it through the vets or, I guess, what do you think?
Yeah, so every bit of feedback that I get from veterinarians is that publications are the currency that veterinarians use to decide on what products they use. So we need to publish our data, certainly, get it peer reviewed, get it out there in the scientific journals of the world. And that's really one of the ways that we can get almost some free marketing for our therapeutic, is by publishing it. Also just attending the different veterinary conferences that there are. There are world conferences that are hosted in the US a couple times a year. And so attending those conferences and setting up booths and really, getting hands-on discussions with veterinarians is really going to help us. So there are a number of other ways for distribution for this, though. So recently, a company called VetDC came out with a different therapeutic for B-cell lymphoma, actually. It's a chemotherapeutic. And instead of themselves actually licensing that product, they have licensed the distribution rights to one of the biggest animal health firms in the world called Elanco. And so that's certainly an option for us, is that we could take our distribution rights and sell those or license those to a big pharma company. But really, I think what we're the most interested in is actually kind of doing this ourselves. So like I said, get that currency of a peer-reviewed journal article out there, and then really just kind of go into the market ourselves with a kind of a marketing campaign to the vets. But then also, really, we're really interested in engaging the consumer because it's not just the vet. The vet has to prescribe the product, but really, we don't think that veterinary pharmaceutical companies have done a good enough job engaging the consumer as far as the the pet owner goes. And so if we can really work with the pet owner on talking about not only gene editing outreach, but also cell therapy outreach, just kind of talking about science to them and having them understand why this is so much cooler and so much different than chemotherapy. We're really interested in kind of that as a marketing and distribution campaign in and of itself.
Okay. Now, what about the competitive landscape? Is there anyone else out there that's doing something similar or parallel that you can talk about? What does that look like?
Yeah, so there has been a single proof of concept study for CAR T-cell therapy in dogs. That was published in 2016 by a group at the University of Penn, Dr. Nicola Mason and her group. And so they did treat one dog with a very transient CAR T-cell. And so they expressed the CAR T-cell with mRNA, meaning that they didn't genetically reprogram the cell. They just turned it into a CAR T-cell, knowing full well that in a few days or weeks, that CAR T-cell was going to actually turn off. So they treated a dog with that, and they showed that this does indeed work. CAR T-cell therapy in a dog will work, but they haven't published anything else since then. So we're certainly sure that they have an ongoing trial for that. And there is another group at the Texas A&M University who has a current grant for CAR T-cell therapy. But as far as we know, we're the only commercial company that's set up to do CAR T-cell therapy. There are a number of groups that are doing adoptive T-cell therapy. So what that means is they're not actually genetically reprogramming T-cells. What they do is they take T-cells from a sick animal and they culture them in the presence of an antigen, like they might, like the T-cells are hidden from in the body. And then they put those back into the dog. And they have no USDA approval for that yet. They're working through that. These companies are. But really, that's a lot more expensive than what we're trying to develop, actually. And so as far as the competitors go, we think that we have a pretty big differentiation of our technology and of our platform that's going to help us be the ones to actually get this done.
Okay. And so now I know another question that probably a lot of investors will have, but looking at potential exit options, right? Like, have you guys started thinking about, is this the type of thing that one of the larger pharma companies or someone else might look to acquire? Can you talk anything about, what that might look like?
Yeah, of course. So like I said, these companies who are developing this adoptive T-cell therapy, they're definitely up and coming in the world. They're getting funded, I think, pretty well right now. And I think that it would be an interesting opportunity for us to exit to one of those companies. Because we have the gene editing expertise and the CAR T expertise. And in fact, I ran into a couple of those companies at the American College of Veterinary Internal Medicine ACVIM meeting just a couple months ago in Phoenix. And I asked them why they're doing adoptive T-cell transfer and not CAR T. And really the answer was they don't have gene editing expertise and they weren't looking to add that to their team. So I think that they eventually will be, because CAR T-cell therapy has the promise of being much better than adoptive T-cell therapy, because it's actually, you're reprogramming the T-cells to actually find and kill the cancer specifically. You're not doing this kind of hand-wavy work. So I think that has a potential exit opportunity because CAR T-cell therapy is only going to get bigger in the human realm. That being said, I do think that some of the bigger animal health companies like Elanco or Zoetis could be interested in something like this. Certainly as we build it out and show that it is safe and it's as effective as we think it could be. And then also because of the data that we're amassing that is going to be clinically relevant to humans, I think that even opens the door to an exit with human pharma. So a company like Novartis or Gilead Sciences or Selectus, so those are some of the biggest names right now in human CAR T-cell therapy. And I think that some of the intellectual property that we develop, not only in our gene editing platform and the platform for generating the CAR T-cells, manufacturing and scale, I also think that the clinical data that we amass is going to be really interesting for an exit to a company like that. And then, of course, there's always, in biotech, there's always an IPO chance. And really, I think if I had to say what our preferred route would be right now, it would be the IPO chance, because we really would like to keep this company, going in our own direction. And so I think, all those are definitely viable options in the future.
Okay. And maybe one of my last questions that I have, but, it sounds like, especially you and your team kind of met, at college or in university and have a really academic background. Can you talk about, are there any other investors or advisors currently on board that maybe advise you from the business end, or, anyone else that you want to talk about that's currently helping you guys out today besides the direct team?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So currently, we do have a few business advisors, just kind of in an informal setting. But really, right now, we're just trying to stay as lean as possible because we know that we have about a year and a half of really true clinical development until we really need to worry about the business scaling and actually market penetration side of things. So really, yeah, we're just trying to stay as lean as possible, stay just really science focused for now. But certainly, as I said, I've been working with a few different veterinary oncology consultants, and certainly I've had plenty of discussions with the animal pharma companies like I've talked to, and there's a number of people who are really interested in helping out. In addition, one of our investors with the Ag Startup Engine, Joel Harris, he worked for Harris Vaccines, which is a company that brought, as it sounds, vaccines to livestock. And so he's really well connected in kind of the animal health space. And he's definitely an advisor to us as far as the business side of things goes. So he's not a scientist, he's a business person. And him and his father led that company to exit in 2015 or 16. So certainly, on our cap table is someone who's very interested and very knowledgeable kind of in the business side of things. And as I said, he's introduced me to just about his entire Rolodex. And there's more people than we could ever, think about employing as consultants who are really interested in this. They know about gene editing, they know CAR T cells, they know that this is really the future, and we're doing it, bringing it to a really big market in canine oncology.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you a lot for all your time today, Wes. Before we head off, is there anything else that you want to just mention, or maybe, any words of advice for any investors that might be on the fence?
Yeah, I think what's really exciting about what we're building and about, certainly this WeFunder campaign is that, someone who's watching this video actually has the chance to be a part of our company, has the chance to actually empower us to do what, we're really passionate about doing. And, just the use of gene editing to cure cancer in dogs, I think those are really nice buzzwords. And they're not just buzzwords, they are what we do every day, in our lab right behind me. And so I just am really excited to be able to talk to you, to have WeFunder on board, and to really ask the public to really help fund our company and help us make this dream a reality.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Wes. I've had a great time talking with you, and
yeah,
we'll see everyone later.
Great. Thank you.